Look, that's the sound, but I don't know when people talk.
Oh, well, with the Murray side. I think he's just gonna test.
That time. Oh, oh my gosh, 4:28.
I mean, my computer clock is fast.
We've got 2 minutes.
Good, good.
I must mind.
Please, yes.
Flying blind here for another minute. Might need to-
But it's
might need to-
4:28.
Okay, spelling it out, just me.
Yep. Still gonna do it.
Did you say we're recording?
We are. Get the mic and.
No, what?
Stand.
Ready? All right, everyone, welcome to the September 12th, 2024 BAR small meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. I'll be your chairwoman. Fellow board members present this evening are Bill Turner, Julia Martin, Bill Huey, and Fillmore Wilson. City staff present are Frankie Pinto, BARS Administrator, and Travis Galley, Senior Preservation Planner. The order of tonight's meeting will be as follows. Each application will start with an introduction from staff for the benefit of the board and public. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation. The applicant will have a 10-minute period of time to give their presentation, and anyone speaking on behalf of the project, so this would be owners, designers, consultants, should speak during the applicant presentation versus during public comment. And please approach the podium and state your name first and last for the record. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time. By custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by public comment. Written public comment that was timely submitted has been provided to the board for review in advance of the meeting. If you are speaking as a member of the public, I'll recognize you. Please approach the podium and state your name first and last for the record. And if you're a neighbor, please state your address as well. Once we've heard from the public, we'll hear city staff comments and recommendations. And once we've heard from city staff and the public, the applicant will have a 5-minute period of time to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations. After the applicant response period, public comment and the applicant's presentation will be closed and we'll move into board discussion and a vote on each application. Results will be posted online at the city's website. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred. Item B1, 18 Church Street, and item B6, 39 Berry Street. Please turn off your cell phones and remember that the purview of this board is architecture only. So any comments related to zoning, livability, stormwater, anything like that are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Okay, agenda item A1 is review of the minutes from the August 22nd, 2024 meeting. I make a motion to approve, subject to the edits I circulated to Frankie this afternoon. Do I have a second? Thank you, Julia. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Agenda item B1, 18 Church Street has been deferred by the applicant. Agenda item B2, 375 King Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
Yes, ma'am. 375 King Street is in Council District 8. It is a category 4, circa 1900 in the Old Historic District. This is an appeal of a staff denial for multiple sign types. This is the property's location on King Street. Some existing photos from Google. Context of King Street. And photo from the architecture inventory. We've got some Sanborn map showing the history of the structure. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Good afternoon, speaking into this, sorry, everybody hear me. My name is Joel Raker. I work for Burr & Foreman Law Firm. Here on behalf of the applicant, 375 King Street, who does business as Mud House. We had submitted an application for the right angle sign that you can see up there, and the application was denied. We weren't overly concerned with this because we understand that Mud House currently has two signage types in use, and that the board policy statement or the bar policy statement for signage on King Street provides that a building may have 2 of 4 signage types. However, we're also aware of the fact that all of the bar policy statements for the Old Historic District overall guidelines and for King Street say that every application is to be decided on a case-by-case basis. So glad to be here today to do that. Before I jump into the specifics, I do just want to express our appreciation for the Preservation Society. We appreciate all that they do to protect all that is Charleston, and we also appreciate their stewardship. To reciprocate that stewardship, we had reached out to them with our application and support that we feel recommends us be granted the ability to have this sign. And they did state back to us that they would not oppose our applications. We also wanted to thank the bar and all that they do to protect Charleston and to further the preservation of cultural and historical significance. With that being said, we believe our sign is in alignment with those goals. The zoning district allows the signage, not only the zoning ordinance, which provides the general business, which this is zoned, is allowed to have right angle signs so long as they are under 9 square feet. But we also recognize that the zoning ordinance defers to the bar and to their policy statements, and the policy statements for King Street, as well as the Old and Historic District for signage, allow for right angle signs, once again, so long as they are under 9 square feet. Ours does not even approach that. As you can see, it's just over 3 square feet. Further, we feel that the sign does not alter the character, the aesthetics, or the historical nature of the building. The sign was designed to fit into all of those things. We considered the size, the color, the overall graphics, and the material in order to fit into, to embrace, and to cohesively fit with not only the surroundings, with our building, but also with our neighbors. We think that it matches the aesthetics of our building and does not alter that aesthetic, that character, the historical nature of it. Similarly, we feel that it does not materially alter or affect our neighboring properties. As mentioned earlier, we value stewardship and we seek to be very considerate and neighborly to those around us. And we think the overall sign package embraces the historical nature of our neighboring architecture as well as our own building. With all of that being said, we appreciate your time here today and we just hope to seek approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
So we're looking at this for you to have a third sign type, not necessarily having. I understand the right angle sign is the new one that you want. Why not go with the right angle sign and say eliminate the window signage or something?
I think they feel that the window sign kind of just adds a little bit more character to the building and blends everything together a little bit more. Whereas if you just have the sign on top and no window sign, it's kind of just you're looking into the windows and it's kind of bare. I think they feel that the window signs tie it all together from top to bottom.
But is there something unique about their building that they need 3 whereas everybody else gets 2?
Unique, no, but I think that the window sign as well as the top sign kind of fit together, and they don't give you the ability, if you're walking down the street and you're 20 feet away, to look up and see that mud house is there, where I think if you're approaching it perpendicularly, it's a little easier, it's much easier to see that sign and to know that's there. I mean, I personally say one of my favorite tie spots is on King Street, and it does not have an angle sign, and I walk by it almost every time I go there, so.
I think it's a nice looking angled sign.
Thank
My other question is, I see another sign in your photo, and that's an illegal sandwich board. Has that been removed?
I am not entirely sure on that.
That's it for me.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone speaking for the public? All right, Frankie, if you'll give the city staff comments and recommendations, please.
All that we had was that per the BAR King Street policy, a business may utilize up to 2 of the 4 signage types: facade, awning, window signage, or right angle signage, except that right angle may not be used in combination with an awning sign. And the business has an existing facade sign and window graphics, therefore it was denied by staff. And we have to recommend denial.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Riker, do you want to respond to or clarify anything in the city staff comments before we move into board discussion?
I would just acknowledge that.
Yes.
Acknowledge that the may is a little bit open to interpretation of the 2 of the 4 signs they may use. But other than that, no, we expected that that was the reason for the denial, and we just wanted to show up here today and kind of express that we feel that an additional signage type overall gives more appeal to recognition off of the street, but at the same time does not draw away from the current nature of the building or anything surrounding the building.
Thank you. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I mean, I think the right angle sign is a nice looking sign. It's not overly large, but the issue here tonight is, can they have an additional sign? And my opinion is, how are they deserving of 3 signs when everyone else gets 2? And then my other issue is, I feel like they're already pushing the boundary with this illegal sandwich board sign anyway. So I don't think there's any compelling reason why they need a 3rd sign.
I'm inclined to agree with that. It's certainly, if there was an argument that this was a unique situation, then that might be a different outcome. But I agree with Bill. I also agree that it's a nice right angle sign. I don't have any issue with the design of the sign.
It is a nice right angle, and to your point, when you're walking down the sidewalk, and all of this should be geared toward pedestrians, it's really hard to see where you are if there's not something perpendicular to you. And I personally appreciate the fact that the policy statement is somewhat open to interpretation. I understand why staff likes to stick to the letter of what's included there, but I would like to think the board could reserve its right to, evaluate proposals holistically and objectively. And I personally think the signage on the window is so subtle. I mean, it barely counts, and their facade signage is tasteful and quiet, and so is the right angle sign. So I personally think that taken as a whole, it's a fine package if they never put that sandwich board up again.
I agree with Julia, and I think it's because the signage is subtle. This right angle sign, the signage is subtle on the windows, and I mean, even I think their awning signage is just, it doesn't scream at you. Although I am hesitant because I didn't hear a great reason from the applicant as to why this building should have 3 signs versus everyone else that only has 2. And if our only reason is because their signage is, maybe that is a good reason, because the signage is subtle. Although that's, a little
I think some other people have single signs that are louder than two of these signs. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that's why, to me, it's like, it deserves to be reviewed by the board subjectively. Not, and that would not open the door for everybody to say, I can have three signs in my estimation.
Just speaking from a staff's perspective, when we allow these, additional signage, it makes it that much harder for them every time somebody walks in the door of the permit office for them to tell them no. So, I mean, the policy statement, maybe it needs to be revised to allow for three signs, but right now it says two. And it makes, I'm speaking from as a former staff meeting from many, many years ago. It makes it really tough for Frankie and the others to tell people no when we approve things like this.
Here you go. I do, and I understand completely why they, as staff, said, no, we can't do this. And that would just have to be, I mean, that wouldn't change, right? But if an applicant had something they felt was compelling, wanted to bring it to the board to try their chances, I don't know, I think they reserve that option.
I mean, I agree that in a lot of circumstances, walking down King Street, if there isn't, if there's just a facade sign, and sometimes even if there's only a window graphic, that you might miss it. And so if there were a circumstance where that was sort of paramount, that yeah, it was because of the design of the storefront and because of the the location of the facade sign, that pedestrian traffic is likely not to notice it. I don't think that's the case with this storefront. I think walking down King Street, if there were graphics in the windows, you would see them. And so I'm struggling like Bill to say that this is the the policies are there for a reason. They are not concrete, so that when there is an appropriate reason to make an exception, I'm just with Bill. I don't find the argument there. If it were there, I'd be perfectly willing to listen to it and be persuaded. I just don't see the argument for the exception to apply to this particular circumstance.
If there were something physically different or physically wrong with this building to warrant an additional sign, I understand. I think that's the reason why the wiggle room is put into the policy statement, right? To accommodate those sorts of situations. But for somebody just to say, I want it, to me, that's not a good enough reason.
Do you want to make a motion, Bill?
I would like to make a motion for denial of the appeal. This is not part of the motion, but if it were me, I would choose the two signs with the biggest bang for the buck. Maybe the one the grass has come off. So I'm not saying this, I'm in opposition to the right angle sign, which is being presented.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we're all in agreement that the right angle
Yeah.
sign is tasteful. Okay, we have a motion on the floor for denial of the appeal. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Put the motion to a vote. Bill Huey,
Yeah, you're fine.
Julia,
They opposed.
Bill Turner,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Moore.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes to the majority and the motion passes 4-4 and 1 against. Thank you, Mr. Riker. Okay, agenda item 354 North Market Street. Frankie, to give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
Yes, ma'am. 54 North Market Street, Council District 8 is a category 4, circa 1884 in the Old Historic District, requesting after the fact approval for addition to roof deck. This is the property's location on Market Street. Existing site photos. Some context of Market Street. Photos from the architectural inventory. And sandboard map showing the history of the structure. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
My name is Clark Batchelder with Goffin County Associates, representing the owner of Henry's on the Market. And this is been a long time coming. We appreciate the staff's time getting to this point. There's some rooftop structures that were built without BAR approval, so we're here to essentially present a proposed solution of reduction of some of that massing. Leaving some of that rooftop elements as well in place and then painting them all white. So I don't know if this works.
If you aim it toward my laptop, it should.
So as you can see here, circled in red, that's the primarily large roof structure that we're proposing to reduce. Some of it is storage that we'd like to keep, and then there's a spiral staircase that leads to the rooftop that we'd like to keep as well. Essentially painting those elements white. Currently, everything on the rooftop now is white. This would be the only element that was painted black, so we just refer to matching everything else that is on that rooftop. Go to the next page, please. So the elements essentially in red on the left were existing, built without approval. It also does include a staircase on the main deck on the left side on Anson Street. We'd like to keep that for access down to the bar below. And so the proposed on the right just shows the cutback of that roof structure, but the storage room and the spiral staircase element we'd like to keep. We feel that it is still minimally visible at that point. Next page, please. And the way we've structured these elevations is essentially pre-2018. Then the middle elevation is built without approval, and then the proposed elevation on the bottom. And so you can see, the elements that we'd like to keep and just paint them white. Next page, please. Next page.
So, oh, sorry, did it skip one?
No, I just didn't have anything to say about that. And then, so this is the main facade. And so you can see, in the middle there highlighted in red, that structure was fairly large. So we were proposing to cut back that roof structure. And most of that roof is set back enough, we feel, that won't be visible. Next page, please. And then you can see here the essentially extension of that staircase to the roof from what we're calling the whiskey room on the second floor. This is a view from the corner of Anson Street and Market Street. And proposing to, in reviewing with staff, we're painting everything white to help that blend in with the sky. Next page, please. We were proposing something here, but this is essentially saying that we need to provide a railing because of Dominion setback from the power line. So we don't feel that this is actually in the BR's purview, but we left this in here just so that it could be part of the discussion, because we've had multiple discussions with the staff about this. Next page, please. And here's a 3D perspective before and after of the corner of Anson Street and Market Street. Next page, please. This is from the front on North Market Street. Next page. And then here's some 3D aerials showing the proposed structure. And I think this helps you visualize what we're actually proposing. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
So how did this happen? Like, there was no BA review and no permit? Is that kind of how it was?
That's correct.
Um,
I think it was somebody noticed it, whether it was BAR staff or somebody addressed it to our attention.
I believe we received a complaint. Or enforcement did.
And, you want to keep the stairs that were added. I don't even know, was the roof accessible prior to this work by the
Yes.
public?
Yeah, there is a stair in the back, along the alley in the back. These views it's hard to tell, but the 3D view on the right on the screen, on the far side, there's a staircase, exterior staircase that leads up to the roof.
But not one that leads up internally from the building. Is that what you're saying?
That is from the patio in the back.
Okay.
That leads up to the third floor,
Okay.
open space, right?
Just curious about your take. I mean, do you think that stairwell that was built recently is compliant with current code?
That spiral staircase,
No, the public one.
the one that's on the Anson Street side. I mean, to our knowledge, yeah, I mean, we've done some work in this building, for this client.
So there appears to be a fair bit of work that was done aside from your drawings as well. Is that?
Yeah, I honestly, I can't speak to everything that's been done. We're here tonight to just talk about what's visible from the
I
street.
guess I'm asking, was your firm hired to do the renovation drawings that have been ongoing?
No.
Okay, so you're just here to handle
Here
this issue.
Just to handle the
This
issue
issue.
of
Okay,
getting approval for the cutback of the reduced massing.
okay.
Right.
So there were no rooftop appurtenances ever approved?
I believe there was one that was.
Do you know which one?
I'm trying to remember. We've met about this so many times at this point. I know the mechanical units were approved, and I'm wanting to say it was this one here with the windows. But I can't say for certain that was the one that was approved. There had been previously, a roof deck noted as being approved and that there were structures up there not visible from the street. So not under BAR purview.
Frankie, was that before this photograph, the street view from 2018 or?
Yes, it was
2017?
prior to
It
2018.
was already there.
So there's been fairly aggressive development on the rooftop,
Since 2018, yeah.
term it that way, I guess.
So I mean, without a floor plan, can you tell us what's driving the locations of the two staircases? Is it,
Yeah, it's access to the bar below. The
both spiral and the other one?
That's correct. Yeah, the regular staircase that's on Anson Street that's enclosed, that structure that goes up beyond the roof deck, is more or less the second means of egress. The spiral staircase would just be used for staff. That's right.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, and so the large structure that's gonna be cut, you described it as being cut back. So it would be lowered so as to not be fundamentally would not be visible from the right of way. If
Well,
it were-
it would not be lowered.
Yeah.
Part of the roof is over. I mean, you can see it in the right view there.
So it's still,
We would just propose cutting it back to just be over that storage structure.
Right, and so the two, I saw the two parts that are remaining that would be visible is the stairwell and the storage room. I think if I'm interpreting.
The two stairwells.
And both of those in there, as they would be left, would be visible. Even slightly.
And I will say, sorry.
And the stairwell from on the Anson Street side, that's existing. That's not part of this proposal.
oh, that was new.
The covered housing, if you
Yeah,
will,
that's what I'm talking
there
about,
is in
yeah.
the proposal.
That's
Oh,
new.
that is,
Mhm.
Yeah, we've met with the BAR staff and we were under the understanding that as long as we painted it white, that we could leave that. But what Rose arose from that was the other structures. And then everything got looped into one, and then Frankie asked us to just compile everything together.
So it's the two stair structures and then the remaining portion of the storage area that we're really looking at.
That's
And the
right.
extension of chimneys and, right?
Yes, I was gonna mention that
Okay.
the chimneys were an issue we discussed with staff, and the extension portion of that chimney is not technically historic. The client extended that chimney to match some of the other heights of that structure that he built. So we were just proposing to leave the chimney structured as is, and I think that was the recommendation of staff as well.
Do you know if the building inspections have been reviewing this ongoing sort of work? Especially what we were just looking at was that egress stair proposed, if it truly does meet code.
Yeah, so right now, and this is sort of a separate discussion, right, with permitting, but we are working on getting permit approval for the whole roof deck. Right, currently, right now, this area is sectioned off, waiting on BAR approval, waiting to resubmit for the permit. So currently, this is not being accessed by anybody until we get approval.
So have you set, I guess, the question, I'll just say, for example, look at that stair. And looking at the plan that you provided, have you verified that that stair is code compliant, or would that structure potentially need to even grow again, I guess is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, the structure wouldn't need to grow. I can't speak to the actual code compliant of the stair. We're not contracted to do that as part of this submittal. But that's all part of the next part of this project. Essentially, this is phase one. We need to get BR approval. And then we're saying we're not going to modify that bulkhead, essentially.
That's not one of the things that we were notified by a building that they were requiring alteration to. There are structures up there. Part of the issue is the distance being required from Dominion to keep customers away. What is the power line across the front?
Yeah, there's a live power lines.
So they have a setback requirement. So they were told they either had to build a wall, some sort of structure to keep people back, a rail. There were several options, and building was looped into that discussion. And they had requirements in order to keep people away. So the stairs were not something that the building department has told us is an issue with them.
Well, they might not have reviewed all of it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Has this work been inspected?
It has.
It has.
It's been inspected and told what they did not have permits for. Not Mr. Batchelder, he was not involved in that.
Oh, no.
So it
yeah, I
is several
understand.
concurrent issues going on.
Okay, I was just wondering why it was called in, it was reported by a concerned citizen of some kind, rather than building inspections going down there and saying, wait a minute, what's all this, you don't have approval for all. Is that a fair question?
I know that there was some work being done that building was inspecting on the ground floor having to do with freezers. I don't think they were going up to the roof. And I don't initially think that a report came in from them letting us know that there was work going on without a permit. I don't think they were aware of the alterations. Our enforcement officer received a complaint that things had been placed up there without permit, and we started looking into this.
And then building did go and.
They have gone through and provided the owner with sort of a list of things that need to be permitted. As far as I know, the stairs is not one of those issues. Or at least not something that requires alteration to get approved.
Okay.
I'm assuming there was an engineer involved, but since that wasn't on the list of things I was told about, I didn't look into it further.
Any other questions?
This is just a curiosity question. If you go to the first photograph,
Yep.
what are those three black
Panels.
Mirrors.
Dartboards. Oh,
mirrors?
Just the back side is 3 mirrors.
I was imagining dartboards.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. Okay, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Speak real quick.
I was Eddie Bello. I'm here for another application. I wasn't gonna speak. But my firm is doing a project directly to the north of this. And the property line actually is right up against their building. And I don't know the plans about this. I noticed in our working on the design, our project's already gone through full BAR and permitting. I noticed a lot of things, and I know it wasn't just Batchelder's problem. I did not call it in, but there's a ton of stuff that does not look at all approved. I just want to make sure that there is no access to the north. Right now, they're using my client's property for freezers and all this kind of stuff. And just want to make sure that stair doesn't empty out onto the north side, because that's onto my client's property. So I don't know what the photos show, but just as y'all figure things out, again, I know it's not the applicant's issue, but I want to make sure nothing's been, not a lot is approved over there, is what I'm getting at. So just as y'all look through it, that whole north side is not their property. Thanks.
Normal Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. After the fact requests are always unfortunate, and this one is particularly egregious given its high visibility and a sensitive area adjacent to the National Historic Landmark, Market Hall and Sheds. The PSC would like to note that we really appreciate this application's clear overview of the proposal and efforts to scale back the scope of the alterations, but feel this doesn't go far enough. This structure nearly doubles the footprint of the existing rooftop program and adds inappropriate height and mass at a highly visible location on the building. This request should be denied, but at the very least, its visual impact should be reduced by restoring the former chimney configuration, as these two chimneys are an important reference point for height along the streetscape. The height of the canopy should be reduced accordingly to not exceed that of the restored chimneys. We appreciate the board taking these comments into consideration. Thank you.
Amanda Nestor with the Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for the after the fact approval for an addition to the roof deck at 54 North Market Street. Overall, we believe that the visible equipment and structures on the top of the roof at 54 North Market are unattractive and detract from the historic character of the building. The addition of a large and highly visible roof deck on the building further clutters the rooftop and is insensitive to the historic character of the building. While we appreciate that the applicant has proposed a means to mitigate the size of the rooftop addition, as a policy, HCF is opposed to visible roof decks within the historic district. Even with the proposed reduced size of the structure, it will detract from the historic character of the building and the district as a whole. We have substantial concerns about this project, and we respectfully recommend denial of the rooftop addition at North Market Street.
Thank you. Is there anyone else speaking to the public? Okay, Frankie, will you give us the staff comments and recommendations, please?
So first we had a little information. As was already stated, alterations have been constructed on the rooftop without approval or permit. This has been ongoing since 2018. But this applicant has been working with staff to reach resolution. The resolution that we have come to is what's labeled in the submittal as proposed. Some of the elements seen on the drawing, such as guardrails, have been required per fire marshal and Dominion Energy to restrict patron access, to restrict the patron access area due to proximity to electrical components. Primarily, these features aren't visible from the public right of way and aren't under purview, but we requested they be shown on the drawings anyway. The staff conditions that we have are what we requested of the applicant and what he is showing in his drawings. That the alterations to the rooftop structures be as minimal as possible and push back from edges of structure, and that the proposed alterations to the structures be a lighter color so it not seem as massive as the existing. Our recommendation is denial of after the fact existing conditions but approval of the alterations to the after the fact elements as proposed.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Batchel, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment to the city staff comments?
Yeah, I'd like to clarify that the north property is out of scope of the submittal, and the stairs of the rooftop exit out onto Anson Street, so they don't have any concern with the north property. And then the client is aware that the spiral staircase does protrude up and is pretty close to North Market Street, and is willing, that would be a give, if we got rid of that and then brought down the chimneys, that he would be acceptable, that would be acceptable to them. If that would be okay with you guys. What really they would like to keep for the most part is the bulkhead on Anson Street. That's the most important part. And then I would like to also point out that this is not, we're still going through permitting to get the occupancy worked out, but they already have approval for roof deck occupancy. It's a pre-existing occupancy from when this was a residence, when it was actually 3 stories on the corner. So we're not asking for approval to have a roof deck. We're just asking for approval of the visible elements that you see. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I will say that, first of all, you're very kind and brave to help these applicants out. But Henry has been naughty. I'm just not able to get behind leaving those stair extensions so visible, and I don't think painting white really makes them go away. And I just imagine if an applicant came and requested a stair to the roof, that we would absolutely recommend that it be pushed back, oriented such that it was not right up against the parapet, and a lot less impactful. Coupled with that, I really think it has some code compliance issues that shouldn't be grandfathered since it was not permitted. So that's kind of my take. The chimney extensions too, I think they should be removed. There's no pressing reason for them to be on there. In general, I think whatever is allowed to remain should be minimally visible, if at all. Because I don't see a reason to reward this owner, for just kind of cutting corners and not following the rules.
I tend to agree with Julia. This is a classic case of build it and then ask for forgiveness. What's being proposed here likely would have never been approved by the board, and this puts us in a difficult situation. And I agree with Julia that probably the most egregious of what all's been done up there are the 2 stair access points, especially the one on Anson Street it's basically smack up against the back of the parapet. And painting it white is not gonna make it go away. The storage sort of towards the center of the roof, I'm not so bothered about that. I don't think it's be highly visible. I agree with Julia, there's no reason to extend the chimneys, put them back the way they're supposed to be. But this BR has been around since 1931. I mean, come on, you have to be a complete moron not to know that you have to get approval for something like this.
I agree with my fellow board members, and even if this was more acceptable and less visible, I would want to see more information in the drawings. I would want to see sightline drawings. I think from this, number one is I can't tell the extent of visibility without a site visit. If I went down there to myself, I could. I didn't have time to do that, or I would have. I can't tell really enough about the extent of visibility to make an informed decision. And secondly, I think from looking at the drawings that what is proposed is going to be visible. I think I agree that chimney extensions should go, and I could I don't believe I could support this.
You know, there are two ways to look at this, and I think, you know, looking at I would say the extent of what's been done there and then taking any reduction in that as a positive is this is the one that we have to look at. Would we have approved this in the first place? I think Bill made that point. So, you know, it probably would have required definitely a more sensitive plan where things were moved further back from the street, diminished in height. There's a lot of things. So I don't know, Frankie, in your discussions with this applicant, you offered up potential concessions of taking parts off and paring things down, but you had qualified, though it still had to come back for the board's approval.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah. I just I don't think taking something that's kind of egregious and reducing it down could be spun into a positive in any light from our side of the table over here. I think we do need to look at what it is, how it's proposed to be. Even you could consider it almost a submittal. If it was submitted this way, I wouldn't have approved it. Even with the reductions that are proposed, I wouldn't. And I know I've proposed things on rooftops before, and I was told immediately that it has to be very well removed from the parapet and cannot be within sidelines. And that's been kind of a standing. We were talking about the sign ordinance and all the standing rules and regulations around that. I've always known that to be the same with rooftop decks. Minimal visibility on structures on the roof. So I think that's the way we really do have to do this. And I think it is still aggressive the way it's proposed. And I'm sorry they've gotten this far down the road with this, but like I say, you roll the dice, you play a big game and you might lose a big game. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but procedurally, I think this probably could have been remedied. Now it sounds like years ago.
I'll go ahead and make a motion for denial of modified after the fact. Modified after the fact elements as submitted.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for denial of the modified after the fact elements as submitted. Do I have a second to Julia's motion?
Second.
Bill Hewitt will put the motion to a vote. Belmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill Turner,
Yay in favor.
Julia,
In favor.
Bill Hewitt.
In favor.
The chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. Okay, agenda item 4, 252 Congress Street. Frankie, if you give us an introduction and overview of the project, please.
Yes, ma'am. 252 Congress is in Hampton Park Terrace, Council District 6. It is a category 4 circa 1920 in the historic materials demolition purview. Requesting after the fact approval for the stucco. This is the property's location on Congress. Previous site photos before the removal of stucco. Some context of Congress. And then we're not showing the history of the structure. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Hello, my name is Tyler Smith, and I'm here working with the clients, the owners, Mitzi Ball, who's the house with the daughter, and she'll be moving into it when it's finished. You've seen this before. We came in for a window change maybe 2 or 3 months ago. This house is a modest house, Hampton Park Terrace, pretty small for the neighborhood, one of the smallest, I think. It's a 1-level house, and it will remain that. We have a small addition on the back. It's unusual in my experience in that it's a historic house that was wood frame with original stucco. When we came upon the house, the stucco was in pretty bad shape, dating from the mid-30s. My assumption at first was that it was not original stucco. There was a fair bit of rot and termite damage on the house, although less than I might have thought. There was termite damage in 4 places around the house. But the stucco was installed with like a welded wire metal lath, which I've never seen before. My research on it in recent weeks found that it dates to the early 1900s, so it was there. It was available and apparently used. There was no weather barrier. There was no builder's felt, no tar paper, no anything on it in between the stucco and the solid wood sheathing. So some of it was in bad shape, and we knew that it would need to be repaired, and so that was the plan. However, the house was about 3.5 inches out of level from front to back, and about 2 inches out of level from side to side. And they squared up the house and built a new foundation under it, entirely around all 4 sides. And in doing that, in squaring up the house, they tweaked the walls, and the stucco that was not already failing was popping off of the wall. The fasteners were failing, and it was coming off in sheets. And so there was stucco. I saw we weren't involved with that part of it, but the builders, of course, were. And it was off the wall by as much as an inch and a half. It was just coming off. And so the contractors removed the rest of the stucco, and they were ready to put new stucco on. And the owner, Mitzi, was getting with her insurance carriers and trying to foresee a termite bond on the house. She made some phone calls, and 3 major inspectors would not bond the house with stucco over wood framing. We have a letter from Ledford's. Maybe I should advance things here. There's a letter at the end. You can see the stucco, as you can see. Back. Maybe at the end, is that letter on your?
I thought it was.
It was attached to the application.
Okay, it was attached to the application.
Yeah.
It's our package.
It was
Yeah.
provided to the board.
We've got it.
So in any case, Mitzi was quite concerned that she might not be able to get a termite bond on this house. And anybody who's involved in this business and putting stucco over wood framing, in my view, it's always best avoided. We try to avoid it. I've done it one time in my career, and it was not an inexpensive thing, and this was probably 10 years ago. So anyway, the stucco came off, and we were asked to come in and let you know and ask for the approval and on an after the fact basis for the stucco to be removed. That's why I'm here tonight.
Any questions for the applicant?
Did you have a particular system in mind that you were gonna propose for the new stucco? And I'm just wondering if the termite bond company is fully educated on, the particular system you were proposing?
Well, we did not have anything as a proposal for the new stucco yet. When the owner was doing her research on the insurance end and trying to receive the termite bond, she became very concerned that she might not be able to get a termite bond at all eventually if these 3 major players in the market were not offering one.
Mhm.
And so she would like to go back with lap wood siding instead. And that is our proposal, is to go back with a lap siding in place of the stucco as a better way in her mind. And it's very hard to disagree with that, as we know the climate and stucco over wood framing is just inherently perilous.
So that it's pretty typical from that period, if you get stucco over wood frame that is put on that way, I'm assuming it's sheathing and then the wire mesh and then the stucco.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And I just don't, I don't remember from the, this has been before, I'm trying to remember. Are all of the windows being replaced? Just the ones that are called out specifically, I was just looking at the drawings.
Yeah, there were some 1990s vinyl windows with stickers still upon, and we did replace those with a higher quality modern window. All of the original windows that were in the house are remaining and have been restored.
I asked that because there are certainly systems that, stucco systems that will work on wood frame. They are more complex and obviously, but they do work well. But they would, in this circumstance, they would probably change your reveals. And I'm just thinking ahead of the other problems that might exist in this.
We're here just looking at the stucco, correct?
Sir,
We're only looking at the stucco.
that's what I.
Removal of the stucco, I guess, because this is just demo.
We reviewed the other stuff earlier. Were you there?
It's not ringing the bell to me. Maybe I wasn't here that time.
So we wouldn't necessarily be approving what goes in its place, just whether the stucco.
I noticed that everything else, I think everything else has been
Okay.
previously approved. I couldn't remember if all the windows were being changed out, because if it's all the fenestrations being changed out, and it changes the dynamic of what you put back on. So that's what.
I think that's a good point. Because to have, if the stucco has failed, which it, thinking it has failed. The replacement material, like you said, may be of a different thickness, it could be it could compromise a lot of different details on the house.
Other historic details.
Correct.
Yeah, and the system underneath is going to be different. I mean, there's going to have to be space and a range screen and.
Correct.
Are there any other board
and
questions? Just want to make sure we're not in discussion.
a vent at the bottom.
Any other board questions yet?
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, is there anyone speaking from the public? Go ahead.
So my name is Kevin Amberley. I live around the corner on President Street. I'm the president of the neighborhood association. We haven't taken an official position on this because we were not approached with the information ahead of our last meeting. But as a personal matter, I have to say that I'm opposed to the after the fact permission to remove the stucco. And having thought about it, the problem, of course, is that if the board were to bless the after the fact removal, you'd be basically permitting the builder to go forward with new construction and would have no control over what goes back. And now that the material is gone, the concern is with the use of like a hardy plank. I know that's not the name of those exactly, but that's sort of like a cementitious fiber board, at least according to the plans that I saw, which is going to be completely dissimilar to the original. And this is a contributing house to the National Register District. One of the character defining features that was called out was the stucco on the house. It was built at the same time as the neighboring house that also has a stucco finish on it. There are half a dozen or more other examples in the neighborhood, UG Street, Congress Street, Weston Avenue, several others that are likewise frame construction with stucco finish. And I've looked at several of those. And of course, if you can flip back to the Sanborn map for a second. So one of the confusing things is that the Sanborn maps show all of those stucco over frame homes as frame, because the Sanborn maps are reflecting the interior construction method, not the exterior finish. And so without exception, every one of those stucco homes which has documented history as a stucco frame home shows up the same way. It looks like a frame building. It's not. It was never that way. And I think there would be a real sacrifice to see not only a new system, which may or may not, I have no idea until we see the details about whether anything would change about the rest of the building, but the character defining feature, I don't think should change. And to make it sort of that sort of colonial type look, colonial revivalish, I guess. That's not what it was. It's not what made it historic. And it should not be that way. And then lastly, and I can appreciate the termite issue, but it would be a perverse outcome to allow the owner to remove the siding without permission, find herself in a better position, and then be able to throw herself on the mercy of the board and say, well, because of this condition that I have created, I shouldn't have to lose that benefit that my own violation of the ordinance has created. As the chair will recognize, there is an old maxim in the law that you cannot kill your parents and claim the benefits of being an orphan. It's the same sort of scenario. And I think it was a dangerous precedent to endorse a wholesale change of the character defining home features on a national register property for resale issues. I would be opposed to that.
Named Director with the Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for after the fact approval for stucco removal at 252 Congress. Overall, the applicant's rehabilitation work at this property is appropriately sensitive to the historic fabric. We are very pleased that the soon-to-be rehabilitated house we put back into service. Although we are supportive of the project, we are confident that the stucco finish on 252 Congress Street is original. It is also a primary character-defining feature of the house. Changing the siding material will have a dramatic impact on the appearance of the house and should not be approved. We respectfully recommend denial of this application for removal of the stucco and suggest replacement in kind with new stucco at 252 Congress Street. Thank you.
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. As previously stated this evening, after the fact requests are an unfortunate breach of process, and this application provides no justification for the removal of the stucco or images of the building's current condition. While we appreciate the applicant providing more background this evening, better documentation is needed to be able to address the viability and appropriateness of this request. Thank you.
Is there anyone else speaking? Okay, Frankie, if you give us these staff comments and recommendations, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, I will admit these were written before staff had some more information, but at the time, we did not believe that the stucco was original to the structure, but the age had not then been determined. Well, not entirely common in the neighborhood, there are adjacent structures that have existing stucco on them, excuse me, okay. Demolition of a non-historic rear addition, which was circa 1980s, was approved by staff in January of last year. I'm missing the date. I apologize for the board decision. I thought that was in there. Staff is not opposed to removal of stucco or not considered original. But we have not been able to verify that this is returning the structure to original siding, which we could have considered a repair. Approval of demolition would allow any cladding material to be used, which would include vinyl siding. Staff recommendation is denial of after the fact.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Smith, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments or the public comments?
Sure. We certainly appreciate comments. Would like it known for the record that when the house was leveled and tweaked, it just came off. So it wasn't like there was anything untoward here. There wasn't there were no games being played here in terms of, hey, let's just go ahead and take this off and then we can do anything we want. That's not how this went. In fact, there's a new weather barrier on it with the new stucco joint details installed on there. The intention was to put the stucco back. It was only when our client was working with the termite bond providers that she became very concerned about it. And so, it was in bad shape. It became worse when the building was leveled and tweaked, when it had to be twisted in order to level it up on the house. So, I can appreciate the concerns, and but I do just want it to be known that there was nothing untoward happening here. There was no gamesmanship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, public comment. The applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I would tend to agree that the stucco is character defining. It's kind of unusual, but I think the applicant also recognizes that it is original. It was the original intent of the builder that built it in the 20s. And I know I'm always afraid of stucco on frame. I just am like innately afraid of that concept, probably because having heard so many horrible things about that APHIS stuff 20 years ago. But I know there are systems now that I think work really well, like that Stowe system. Isn't that a good one?
Yeah.
And
Stowe's one of the more common ones.
And it's used on giant new multi-million-dollar houses on the coast. And I just have to think that if there were some connection between the insurance agent person and some representative of a reputable manufacturer for some sort of replacement system, that bridge could be, that gap could be bridged. But yeah, it puts us in a really weird spot because like the preservation societies have noted, if we approve removal, then we have no control of what goes back.
Yeah, my concern is along those same lines that if you approve the removal, you have no control over, of course, over what goes back. And so we have to make a decision based on whether removal of the historic stucco, which certainly on the list was original, is appropriate. And of course, I'm gonna think, if you certainly don't want to put the stucco back on the same way it was put on in 1920, and that does create sometimes some unique issues. In glancing back through these drawings, most of the fenestration is being replaced, which solves the problem of those kind of reveals. Not all of it, but I think there's a little of it left, that a little bit of ingenuity would solve those reveal problems. I don't think you're gonna, and so I'm inclined to think that this is doable reasonably. And I hate, unreasonable burdens on people, but I think this is doable reasonably, and there are some, Julia, I hate, I'm really resistant to stucco on the frame. It's, but there's some systems out there in the last 15 or so years that are gotten really good if they're put together right and the flashing details are done appropriately. And I mean, we've done them on multi-million dollar houses, and I'm sure they have fires.
That's it, and that would be replacement in kind, which would allow staff to approve it.
Right,
Yeah.
that would just be replacement income.
I feel like we say it every meeting, but this area of town is extremely frustrating because of the fact that we don't have any purview over what goes next place, and therefore we open up really a can of worms if we approve demo. So we may be having a different discussion if this were in a different area of town, but I agree. I agree with Fillmore, but I would like, if the plan ultimately is going to affect other historic elements of the house, I would want the applicant to come back, because maybe that would have an effect on our decision, but.
Just to see what the dominoes keep going.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your candor in talking about the existing lath system and the fact that it is old and original. And I appreciate Sheriff Hovey's assessment of the neighborhood context. Sounds like it hung in there for about 80 years. Good for it, I guess. I wouldn't have thought that, but it did. So, but I do believe what you're saying, racking and other things with the house, it probably becomes stuff that's on it. And I tend to agree somewhat what your conclusions are there. And I know there are certain system manufacturers that do actually give you warranties based on certified installers or certified inspections. So you're not shooting in the dark with stuff on the wood. And I know that because Mr. Smith said he's only done maybe one. I've only done one, and I've double checked and triple checked all of that in doing that. So I tend to agree with your assessment on that.
I don't have anything else.
I mean, I guess the hope before I make a motion for denial, the hope is that that the different entities can come together and sort of have a meeting of the minds so that everything works out and there's a termite bond and all this is feasible. But as submitted, I will make a motion for denial of after the fact approval.
I think denial of after the fact removal.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I just read it.
Yeah, no, I read it too, and okay. We have a motion on the floor for denial of the after the fact removal of stucco. Do I have a second to Julia's motion?
I'll second.
Elmore, put the motion to a vote. Bill Turner,
Yay in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia,
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore.
In favor.
Chair vote to the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Smith. You were also next, 694 Rutledge Avenue. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
Yes, ma'am. 694 Rutledge Avenue is in North Central Council District 4. It is a Category 3 circa 1835 in the historic corridor district. Requesting conceptual approval to change existing concrete tile roof to cover and add 3 dormers. This is the location on Rutledge. Existing site photo. Some context of Rutledge. And sandboard map showing the history of the structure. Yeah.
My name is Tyler Smith, and we're working with the owners, Margaret and Robert Rogers. They've owned the house for about 3 years. It's a really, really nice house, the only private residence on the block. It's between a church immediately to the south and a fairly large commercial building to the north. It's a 2-level residence over a basement, and there is a voluminous 3rd floor that we would like to have another addition of guest room. Although it's a good sized house, there are only 3 bedrooms in the house now. They would like to have 4 for the growing family. We would like to add 3 dormers to the residence. Each would match or be similar in detail to an existing hipped dormer that faces the street. There would be 1 small dormer to the south. That one would probably be the most visible dormer. If you look at the lower row in the center, the dormer would be to the right of the chimney. There would be another dormer in the rear of the house. It wouldn't be seen from the street at all. And the largest of the 3 dormers would be facing north, which is toward the commercial building. That's the center image on the upper row. Yes. And in any case, the larger dormer is there so that we can get a stair to the third level. The roof on the house is an original concrete tile roof. It's a beautiful roof. It looks great. However, it has been heavily changed, it's damaged, and there is a massive leak coming through the roof on the southeast corner. Rain literally pouring through the roof. Several roofers have tried to provide repairs to the roof. A lot of sort of bungled work has been done. As you can see, the north facing side, at some point prior to the Rogers owning it, there was a coating placed across the roof. The tiles are old and brittle and they crack due to the age. They're about 90 years old. So we would like to we have looked into having a new concrete tile roof installed on it. We would like to do that. However, the cost of the new concrete tile roof, looking at four different builders and 4 different roofing contractors, is amazingly expensive, more than anybody might imagine, and roughly double what the cost of a new copper roof would be. We would like to have a copper roof installed here in place of the concrete tile. It would match the copper on the front porch. There's a front porch here, as you can see, sort of coming along here. There's existing front porch roof, as you can see down below. That was installed about 6 or 7 years ago in place of existing shingles. I know the former owner, he replaced the shingles with the copper. The concrete tile was already gone at that point. Looking at the top here, the roof plan, you can see the 3 dormers to page toward the top of the page. That's page east. That's the first dormer. To the left, that's the largest dormer facing north, and the smaller dormer facing south. And looking at the elevations, you can see the north is along the bottom right. The south is bottom left, with the existing above. And the front elevations would change only with the dormers that are set back from the street and not highly apparent in our view. And the last dormer facing east there is on the bottom left. These are the sections cutting through. You can see the stair leading up to the 3rd level. That's all I have.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone speaking from the public? Okay.
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. This historic 4 squares hipped roof is a character-defining feature, and the proposal to replace the existing tile with copper, paired with the addition of multiple dormers, would result in a significant alteration to the roof form and overall appearance. The application materials do not document the age or the condition of the tile, which is necessary to evaluate the proposed material change and the impact of the dormers. In addition to requesting more information, we encourage the applicant to minimize the impact to this historic roof form as much as possible. In particular, we are not supportive of the proposed south-facing dormer, which would be the most visible. Thank you.
Minister, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for conceptual approval to change the existing concrete tile roof to copper and add 3 dormers at 694 Rutledge Avenue. Regarding the roof, the concrete tile is a strong character-defining feature of the house that is important to retain. It appears that the roof has been repaired several times in the past. If the roof can no longer be repaired, the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation should be followed. Standard 6 states the following: deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires the placement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, material. While copper is an excellent quality material, we do not believe this change follows the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. We recommend the applicant explore alternative tile materials such as terracotta to retain the character of the house. With regard to the dormers, we are primarily concerned about the large dormer. This dormer is out of scale with the existing dormers and represents a significant alteration to the roof form. We respectfully recommend denial of the change in roofing material and denial of the large dormer. Thank you for your consideration of our comments.
Is there anyone else speaking? All right, Frankie, if you give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Sorry, I can't write fast enough. Staff observations, we have previously supported small portions of demolition of roofs such as those for dormers. And we had noted that while this is primarily noticed in the elevation drawings, the proposal creates an unbalanced condition of having dormers be asymmetrical from right to left. Staff condition for approval is that the dormers should be lowered to keep off the ridge of the roof. If staff recommendation is a conceptual approval with staff conditions and a final review by staff of permit drawings.
If staff was okay with removal of the concrete.
He didn't object to it. I mean.
Mr. Smith, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments?
Please, thank you. In regards to the dormer design, we believe that they are very much in scale with what is already there, which is the west facing dormer on the front of the building. The 3 additional dormers are not higher than the original dormer. They have the same profile. Really, you can notice them the most when you're seeing them in this view, which is squared on in a view that you cannot get in real life. We believe that though the north-facing dormer is wider, it is no wider than needed in order to accommodate a stair leading to the 3rd level. We have to go up, we really need to go up as high as the ridge, but no higher in order to have an adequate amount of head clearance in the space. And we think that each of the dormers that we're adding, especially the 2 that one might see from the public right of way, which is the ones facing south and north, are needed in order to accommodate the space. One of them gives just enough space to have a bathroom on the 3rd level. That's in the center of the house and halfway up from bottom to top. And the dormer on the left, which will accommodate a stair to lead up to the 3rd level, which is needed by this growing family. We do believe that these dormers would barely be noticed by anyone who wasn't really looking for them, and especially the dormer that's hard up against a commercial building to the north. I don't believe that you can see it from any place. You would have to be standing sort of across the street, halfway down the block, and be looking at it due to the fact that it's so tight up against a relatively large building. As far as the copper goes, we certainly understand and believe that ideally, in an ideal world, replacing the existing concrete tile with new concrete tile is a really nice idea. We really like it. Everybody likes it. However, it would be an additional $75,000 to $80,000 over the cost of copper. It is very hard to budget that on a project like this and the residents of this type. So, and we believe that matching the existing copper, which is on the porch roof in the front, makes the most sense in this case. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote. And for the board's benefit and public benefit, this is in the historic corridor. So this is not only demo purview, we also have purview over what goes in its place.
regarding the dormers, I really don't think you're gonna see the north dormer. You know, I've walked that street a good bit and it would be very difficult.
You're tight.
It's tied up against that commercial building. The other dormers, I'm actually fine with them. I think they're appropriately scaled. They match the one that's on the front of the building. So the dormers aren't much of an issue with me. Yeah, I would really hate to see this tile roof go. It is a major character defining feature of this house, and I think it would be awful to lose it. I sympathize with the cost. I replaced although on a much smaller scale, a concrete tile roof several blocks over from this, and that was 15 years ago. And it was horribly expensive, but I did it because it was the right thing to do for the building. Yeah, I would hate to see that go. But at the same time, I do sympathize over the cost.
Do you agree with that? And I think I've been trained that we're not supposed to care about money, right?
That's correct.
But I would, similar to the last item, I would consider some sort of replacement in kind, even if it weren't exactly concrete tile, if there was some sort of composite material that might change the financial implications, but still give that same effect, which, you know, I really admire that house. It's beautiful, and a big part of that is the roof material. So I don't think I can get away from it being character defining and really important.
I think I'm familiar with the house in general, because I drive by there all the time, almost every day. But I went back by again, on my way over here to take a look at it, and it's, that roof, that tile is very character defining. Thinking back, of course, either staff or the board, we have approved, in the demolition only district, we have approved demolition of an original concrete tile roof, and that replacement was ultimately done with stainless steel roof, I recall that. And we have approved changing a non-historic tile roof, a non-original historic tile roof that was in the 50s or 60s with copper. That, but that's a little different. It was a non-historic roof closure system on a non-historic roof structure on a historic thing. So that was a little different. Just trying to, think back on what we've done in the past. They're expensive roofs. I mean, any tile roof is an expensive roof, and I sympathize with that. We're not supposed to consider that in our decision. It's supposed to be based on the standards and appropriateness. So I'm struggling with changing that roof to copper. Well, I don't have a lot of heartache about the dormers. I think that dormer on the north would be nicer if they were all the same. I do think that large dormer, it's a little hard to tell in the graphics on the drawings, but it needs to be off the ridge. And particularly if that remains a tile roof, it has to be off enough for the caps. So it looks in the drawings like the 3-bay dormer is right up on the ridge. It may not be, it just could be graphic. Certainly if that remains a tile roof, it would need to be off enough, because you got to get a ridge cap on. And it can't. So I'm struggling with honestly with replacing them. I understand why, but I'm struggling.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think I'd be willing to definitely concede dormers to keep the tile.
I have no problem with the dormers, but those tile roofs, I do feel that they're disappearing and they're character defining features, and I if there's an alternative, a less expensive alternative that mimics. I don't know what you think about that, Fillmore or Bill, but just something to
I think there-
retain that character defining feature.
I think there are alternatives that might be a little less expensive than you know, a nearly duplicate concrete tile roof or a gray clay tile roof.
Mhm.
I really haven't, I'm not sure about the cost comparison between like a gray clay tile roof versus concrete tile. It might be a little less, still expensive.
I found
But there
this-
are some synthetics. I've never really paid any attention to them. Never worked with them, but there are some synthetics out there that might be a little less expensive.
Mhm. And I do recall the roof you mentioned that was somehow approved for replacement, and I've always felt like that was a mistake and.
I mean, I don't, yeah, and it wasn't, I'm not sure how it actually got to where it was.
Right.
So, I agree, and the tile roofs, you know, I know we don't set precedent because theoretically, because every submittal is different. But a lot of these tile roofs on these wonderful, you know, four squares and arts and crafts houses are reaching the end of their lifespan, and it's going to be I think there's going to be a lot of requests
Mhm.
to replace them with something less expensive. The more times we allow it, the more likely it is that it just keeps going.
I don't know if should this be maybe a referral to allow the applicant to explore placement in kind of, you know,
I don't know if it's-
potentially.
Is it helpful to approve the
Composite, something like
dormers?
that. Huh?
Is it helpful to approve the dormers, or just
Yeah.
defer the whole thing?
Just in that roof right now.
They could always
Okay.
apply and come back with another option.
Motion.
So approve one part. So Julie, did you just
Go ahead.
make a motion? Oh, Bill, did you just make a motion?
All right, I'll do. You got it?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion for approval of the dormers, but denial of the request to replace the roof material with copper.
How about staff comments? I think dormers should be lowered to keep off the original roof. Sorry, staff conditions.
Since we have that review to,
But no,
I think that's that.
okay.
To know.
We've got a motion on the floor for conceptual approval of the dormers as proposed. And that was the only. That was the only thing, the only change to the roof, right? There were no other,
Right, correct. That was
I want to
only,
make sure we're covering everything.
that was the only exterior change aside from the material.
Okay, so conceptual approval of the dormers and denial of replacement of the roof material with copper. Do I have a second to Julia's motion?
I'll second.
All right, I'll put the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yes.
Julia,
In favor.
Bill Turner.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Agenda item 6, 39 Berry Street has been deferred by the applicant. Agenda item 7, 198 Ashley Avenue. Frank, you to give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
One 198 Ashley Avenue is in Radcliffe Borough, which is Council District 6. It is a category 4. Circa 1910 in the Old Historic District. They're requesting conceptual through final approval for facade and fenestration alterations. This is the property's location on Ashley. Some existing site photos. Context of Ashley. And Sanborn maps showing the history of the structure. I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Yes, hello, David Richards, architect, here with Jason Lee, the property owner. Frankie, is this working?
It should be, put it at my computer, and if it doesn't work, I'm happy to click through for you.
Okay, looks like it's working. Yeah, so this is the home and, front elevation from Ashland. A beautiful sort of craftsman style portico entrance. This is the area principally we're presenting tonight, which is on the south side, towards towards the medical complex over there, and it's pretty well concealed from that south elevation. It's a beautiful home, and the owner's just finished it recently, and he's trying to improve it and gradually and bring it up to fix some problems that he's having on the interior principally. Here's the plan. Here's that front portico. Ashley, this is the area we're principally talking about. We're modifying the bathroom to try to improve that. That's obviously not part of this application. There's the roof structure. So here's the elevations. This is the existing area we're talking about. Right now on the second level, there's these jalousie windows, which are from the 50s, obviously not original. They leak, they're problematic. Right now that room is being used and will be, because there's no other place for it, as a closet. So the occupant, clothing is being damaged by UV light, water getting in, moisture getting in. So we're trying to sort of clean that up, allow them to use it as a closet, have some privacy without all the UV penetration in there. So we've changing this out to a window that's more in keeping with the rest of the west elevation. And then on this side, just putting siding there to cover up, and so people aren't looking at the backs of hanging rods. Clothing. This elevation is not visible from the public right away. I think the board is or the staff has assessed that. But in this elevation is really not really very visible at all. It's close to the adjacent property. There's trees in the way, so it's really very minor. So there's some details. There's really interesting shutters on that front elevation, little palmetto tree sort of picks up that detail, which is interesting. I think Jason might have some things to say as well.
Just Jason Lee, property owner, just to add to what he was saying, at some point, I guess in the 50s, they closed that porch and they used 1950 windows in the top. On the lower side, apparently they went back with original windows. So I guess in negotiation, if we're trying to keep one front window facing the front of the property and bringing that back to an original style window, just to make the whole front of the house look aesthetically the same. As you already mentioned, on the side windows that are not very visible by the street, trying to close it for maximum use of the closet. That's all I needed that.
Any questions for the applicant?
I guess, Mr. Lee probably just answered this, but the evolution and had you studied, the age of the enclosure up there, that sort of thing?
Well, it was probably an original two-story open porch. That would be our best guess. I don't have any definitive proof of that. But just looking at the design, it probably was. But yeah, it's just been severely modified over the years and largely enclosed. And they've got these jalousie windows up there, which are obviously not in keeping with the rest of the house.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Do I have anyone speaking from the public?
Will Bay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Although the two-story wing of this building is an addition, it dates to before 1944, according to Sandbar maps. While the PSC is not opposed to the replacement of the non-original aluminum windows on the west elevation and south elevations, we are not supportive of removing what are likely original openings altogether, which would create a very atypical condition in a visible location. Thank you.
Is there anyone else speaking? Okay, Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
We had a couple observations. One is, again, that the alterations to the east elevation is not visible from the public right of way. And that the first floor porch infill has the same light pattern as the historic house, but with paired windows. Staff conditions for approval, the windows should be differentiated from the historic house. And we don't think that we believe that the south elevation should retain some form of detail, whether that is windows or shutters in their place. Staff recommendation is a conceptual approval with those staff conditions and a final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Richards or Mr. Lee, did you want to respond to or clarify anything in the public comment and the city staff comments and recommendations?
Yes, we appreciate Frankie's comments. We met with her earlier this week, I guess, and she gave us some options in respect to that, but I guess I'd like to get the board's input and we'll obviously work closely with the city as we move forward.
And you're requesting final approval today? Frankie,
That was what you had on the application, yes.
okay. Okay, public comment, the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I think I would say probably, I don't really have an issue with placing the 50 Chelsea windows, but I do agree with staff's comment about that elevation. Having this big blank wall up there needs something. I don't know about shutters. So is the implication with suggestion of shutters that they were just fixed?
Like closed shutters?
We were trying to come up with options since we understood it was an existing closet. We understood why they were making the request, but that they needed. Obviously, the porch has been altered since it's enclosed, but we were trying to find some form of detail to retain.
Yeah, some form of detail would be, I think, a very good idea. And I think Preservation Society's comment too, it's just sort of an oddity of that blank wall. Ultimately, a culmination of what was a porch becoming basically just a straight sided wall. So that would be my only reservation, would be to add some form of detail for staff's condition.
Review the window proposed for the west elevation of that former porch as matching the historic.
Shutters, I don't know. I think if you go back to just one of the photos, I think enough has been done to it. Same page. The semblance of a porch is kind of gone. I think there's enough wall and context to say, okay, this is a wall more than it was an enclosure between columns or whatever. So, and that's just the way I'm seeing it. So rather than come back and try to introduce some detailing that says, okay, here's a porch and here's an enclosed porch, I think that ship's already sailed. So I'm okay with the one in front. I'm just really concerned about the blank there. It's very good.
It's those openings are not original in any.
Openings. No.
No, they're, so, I mean, you know, those, the position of those windows it doesn't, I mean, except for the fact that it's part of the 1950s, the Johnson windows were put in, unless we want to consider that in a sort of a preservation perspective, that those openings don't have any bearing on what goes back.
Right.
The blank wall is a little jarring, but I won't comment on the architecture. I mean, it's, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't know that closed shutters there
No.
would read any
Tend
better
for
than a
those
blank
areas.
wall.
I think in general, we don't like faux conditions.
I never cared much
Yeah,
for
I've never noticed.
fake,
No.
fake.
But I would
Shutters.
say that I almost think the ship of it being a former porch is still afloat, at least in my view. I mean, when I look at that house, I'm like, that used to be a double porch, which is pretty obvious to me, so totally erasing that is a little tough for me to accept, but I mean, generally, it's another great house and I'm happy for the owner and I think your intentions are good. So, let me just ask the architect, have you considered potentially replacing fenestration and then just sealing it from the inside? I mean, I know that's been done successfully before.
We're looking to the board for direction.
Gotcha.
I agree with what's been said. I have no issue with replacing the jalousie windows. I think it might be best though to vary the light cut on this bump out here, just so that it reads a little different from the main body of the building. The blank wall, that does trouble me too. Maybe there is an interior solution. But that's really my only major concern.
I have nothing to add. I think staff's comment too is covering the issue that we're all having. But I think they could work with staff to figure that out.
I'm just not following. So staff and you guys are okay with putting a single window on that front facade of the former porch that looks like standard windows, if it just has a different light cut? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about a different light cut for all of the windows in the bump out, calling it the bump out on the side. I do tend to, sort of backtracking, I do tend to agree with you. It would read more like a former porch if you did keep with the two windows up top.
And the windows on the first floor are not changing and
They're not changing.
they're older,
So
right?
the only window I think we're looking at is that one on the second floor, west elevation.
Mhm. I mean, in my mind, if the first floor fenestration could just be copied to the second on the west and the south. And sealed inside and whatever they want to do for privacy and light blocking. I would let it be a former porch, sun porch, whatever. From the public perspective. But I'm gonna let somebody else take the reins.
Okay, with that window on the second story. I think it looks nice.
I do tend to agree with you on second floor windows on the front.
Match the first floor?
After looking at this more, I think it would make for a stronger composition for the house as a whole. I really do.
About the south elevation.
The west elevation,
Be willing to trade.
Well,
west elevation
That's what-
and south elevation windows, on the second floor.
I feel like we're creating that fake condition, even with putting windows on the second floor that are ultimately, yes, they.
We protect the public. View.
I mean-
And they could be unsealed later on.
I don't know if there's a solution with some sort of solar blackout shades or something. There's some type of interior solution.
Could you form that into some information?
Let's see. I'll make a motion. Motion for, he's asking for final, he's got,
I think we have the option. So staff could only make a recommendation for conceptual, but we have the option for any event, approval is the route.
Yeah, I'm okay with a final with conditions. I'd like to make a motion for final approval with the conditions that windows be introduced into the second floor of the south elevation. And we'll let them figure out how to handle that internally. And also substitute a ganged pair of windows on the second floor of the
Can you repeat
west
that
elevation.
second one?
Substitute a ganged set of windows on the west elevation on the upper floor, matching the lower floor. And the east elevation is really not visible, so.
I would second that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for a final approval with board conditions that windows be introduced on the second floor. Into the second floor south elevation and to substitute a gang set of windows,
Double windows.
double windows. I'm learning new words all the time here. On the second floor west elevation. Matching the lower floor. Okay, do I have a second to build motion? Julia, you give a second to that. Put the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia.
In favor.
The chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 8 is 48 South Battery. Is this what you refused? Yeah. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
48 South Battery is in Charleston, Council District 8. It is a category 2, circa 1848 in the Old Historic District, requesting preliminary approval for a new elevator, new shed at rear, new foundation and planter, and hardscaping alteration. This is the property location on South Battery Street. Existing site photos. Some context of South Battery. Context from Lambeau. And Sanborn map showing the history of the property. We'll turn it over to the applicant.
Hello, I'm Angie Shar with Nutters. I'm going to present our proposal for the elevator, a garden shed, and some courtyard modifications to 48 South Battery. Our objective is to provide a way for our clients to be able to age in place and access every level of their home. Due to the floor plan and the interior easements on the home, there's just not a good place to put an elevator within the footprint. I'd like to note that there was a previously approved elevator back in 2023. However, the client reached out to us with some concerns, so we decided to restudy it. The previous design was in roughly the same location as ours, but was attached to the home. HCF holds an easement on the property, so I'd like to thank them and the Preservation Society for reviewing our proposal. I'd also like to thank BD and Frankie for taking time to review the project. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see this far away, but here are some views of the proposed elevator as you move east on South Battery. You can see a glimpse of it. I don't know if you guys sitting down can see, but glimpse of it between 50 and 48 South Battery. These views are taken about 140 feet away from the elevator. Here are some side-by-side comparisons of our design versus the previously approved design. Ours is on the left and the previous one is on the right. While our elevator is pulled away a little bit from the existing building, both elevator designs are minimally visible from South Battery. Sorry, I'll go back. There's another one as you're traveling down South Battery. Here are some views of our proposed elevator from Lambeau Street, taken from about 240 feet away. the back wall of 48.5 South Battery, there's like a kind of a red arrow and white wall obscures most of the elevator shaft. So again, it's minimally visible from the public. Here's some views of the courtyard as it is. Here's our demolition site plan. We will be replacing the existing fountain. And then there's like a cooking pergola that we're gonna get rid of and kind of rework that area out there too, so. Here's our site plan. You can see the footprint of the elevator and the associated landings and like the purplish gray color. And the green area represents the small garden shed. As I mentioned earlier, we decided to pull the elevator slightly away from the building. This is a limited engagement with the historic structure. It is a more sensitive approach. And it also allows any existing openings to at least stay in place and they're visible. Offsetting the elevator also encourages more light and air around those windows, doors, and rooms. Here's a zoomed in view of the courtyard. You can see some of the landscape and hardscape modifications we're proposing, as well as the garden shed and elevator. By disengaging the elevator from the building, it becomes a reversible solution. So if someone wanted to remove it in the future, they could. The elevator is structurally independent of the house and is only lightly connected by two landings. So there's kind of an L-shaped landing on the second floor and a catwalk straight shot on the third floor. This is the small 66 square foot garden shed to help hide yard equipment and bikes. There's currently no exterior storage on the site. The shed will also have a shallow foundation, which will make it a reversible solution. We would need to make some slight modifications to this existing facade. The upper left window on the third floor, we'd need to convert to a door. We would save that window for future reuse. And then on the bottom floor, that door, we would just reverse the door swing and keep the door. Here's some elevations showing the elevator and landings connected to the building. Our material choices include a stucco base around the ground level with a stainless steel trellis system. And then as you go up, it transitions to a smooth hardy board panel with wood molding breaking up each level between the windows. Wood frame landings with 5/4 decking to match the existing piazza, a low slope tip roof, brought it as low as possible to still allow for the maintain mechanical access to the elevator, the motor at the top and the hoistway. Impact rated Marvin windows with an opaque film on the backside. This is kind of an important part. We added fenestration to bring softness and shadow and scale into the elevator. It can be such a tall mass without it being broken up. So we kind of played off the proportion of the windows that are there, but also not matching them completely. The film that's applied to the back will be removable and will also be able to help with solar heat gain because you can't condition this elevator shaft in the floodplain. Here's some sections. Got a corner detail here showing the recessed windows. We're trying to create some really deep jams. And then that's a condition of the corner board. Finish up. You can kind of see on this axon, we're demonstrating the depth and shadow we're trying to layer into the facade. This drawing also shows the relationship between the paneling, corner boards, and window heads and sills. Overall, we believe that between the fenestration, articulation of the corner boards, and intermediate panels break up the overall elevator massing. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? anyone speaking from the public?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. As mentioned, Historic Charleston Foundation has an interior and exterior preservation easement on the property at 48 South Battery. The donor of the easement obtained approval for an elevator addition through HCF, and the VAR later approved the elevator addition at the February 23rd, 2023 meeting. The owners of the property are seeking to revise the elevator design to have a lighter and more reversible impact to the historic structure. HCF staff has worked closely with the applicant over the last few months and confirmed that this proposal conforms to the requirements of the easement. This request for an elevator addition is very complex. HCF is supportive of this request for the following reasons. The interior of 48 South Battery is historically intact and is protected by an interior easement. There is no opportunity for an interior elevator while also conforming to the requirements of the easement. There is also no opportunity to install the elevator on the rear of the dependency due to the chimney that is in that location. We have also seen a successful use of this approach to an elevator addition at the Blackwalk House, a Category 1 National Register landmark building at 18 Bull Street. The design of this addition prioritized the protection of the historic interior features while also providing the accessibility needs needed for the use of the building. The physical modifications to the historic dependency to accommodate the elevator are minimal. One window will be enlarged for a dorm. The elevator addition is easily reversible. If removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. The modification is clearly differentiated from the historic structure. Allowing the installation of an elevator supports the continued use and maintenance of the property by its homeowners by enhancing accessibility, particularly for an elderly or mobility impaired residents. An elevator enables long-term occupancy and engagement with the home, fostering a deeper personal investment in its upkeep. This modern adaptation ensures the house remains functional and livable, thereby encouraging ongoing preservation efforts. Thank you for your consideration of our comments.
Is there anyone else speaking?
Laurel Bay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC appreciated the chance to speak with the applicant about this project, as well as HCF as the easement holder, and we are certainly sympathetic to the effort behind this proposal to minimize the impact to exterior and interior historic material. However, visibility is also a significant factor, and compared to the more traditional elevator addition previously approved by this board, this 3-story standalone tower is much more conspicuous. We would be more comfortable with the less visible approach previously approved and appreciate the board and project team taking our comments into consideration. Thank you.
Is there anyone else speaking? All right, Frank, if you give us these staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff had some observations, one about the tinted windows that were proposed. While BAR does not allow tinted windows on commercial products, the proposed windows would be minimally visible. In this location with the limited visibility, staff prefer the real tinted windows rather than faux window or shutter. And the proposal is pulled away from the historic fabric to have very light touch and be reversible. Staff recommendation is preliminary approval and final review by staff of permit drawings.
Ms. Shar, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comments or the city staff comments?
The only thing I did want to mention, with the previous design, it was also a masonry, so it's approved as a masonry structure. And we wanted to we thought it might be difficult to, one, match the brick of that, and also just wanted a lighter, differentiated approach, pulling it back in a way. So I just wanted to put that in there, so we're trying not to tamper too much with the existing fabric of the home.
Thank you. All right, public comment to the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
It's an interesting solution. appreciate the fact that it's a very light touch. And Frank, I think you even said minimally visible. I think it is minimally visible. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be fun to do structurally, but it looks like they've got it figured out. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
I don't really have anything else to add. I mean, everything else on the site too, such as a garden shed, I don't know that you're really gonna see it. Hardscape is very simple, you know.
Sounds like we got some consensus for a motion.
Yeah. Make a motion for preliminary approval for the new elevator, new shed, new fountain, planter, and hardscaping alterations. And final review by staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval for the new elevator, the new shed at the rear, the new fountain and planter and hardscaping alterations. And final review by staff of permit drawings. So I have a second to Julia's motion.
Sorry.
Julie, the motion to a vote. Bill Turner,
Yeah, in favor?
Julia. In favor. Bill Healy.
Yeah.
Chair votes for the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're on 258 Cumming Street. Frank, if you give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
258 Cumming Street is in Canterbury, Elliott Borough, Council District 4. It is not surveyed circa 1890 in the Old City District. Requesting conceptual approval for a two-story addition at rear of existing home. This is the property's location on Cumming Street. An existing site photo. Context of Cumming Street. And sandboard map showing the history of the structure. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Hello, my name is Alan Kinter. I'm here for Sam's and Collis. For 258 Cumming, we have a house that's been, I guess, a rental recently and then has been sitting empty. And is in need of renovation. His intention is to also add an addition to the rear of the property. And we're proposing basically a similar sized footprint as the existing with kitchen, living, dining on the first and a bedroom suite on the second. Modifications to the existing house will be minimal and basically just consist of the removal of a central staircase, addition of a hallway in that place, and a bathroom and pantry. Keeping the fireplaces, the chimneys. The house has lost some fenestration over the years. It's, you can still see some of it. And then I think, you know, as the siding's been repaired and replaced, some of the sills and pediments have gone away, but I think they were, they're definitely still there on the front. So we were basically considering just matching those, putting the little bit more of a continuation of that on the frieze and the columns, which are now basically just 6x6s. And the site is a little bit strange because the house is about 25 feet set back from the edge of the sidewalk. So we've kind of stopped the rear of the addition at the requirement for clearance from the pecan tree that's in the southern corner on the rear. And we're trying to leave enough room in the backyard there for basically a patio area, a small fountain, some landscaping. In the front, the intention is to remove the existing wood fence and put up something's nice, retain use of that front for parking. And or if there's nothing there, then, you know, just use of the front yard as a patio and whatnot.
Any questions for the applicant?
So was it would it be your intention to come back as a separate application for your site work?
Yes, my wife will probably do that. She's a landscape architect and I mean, I didn't want to give it to her until we solidified a footprint, and I was going a little bit too far, I think, by putting the plants on there, because when I showed it to her, she accused me of telling her what to do.
Good chance not.
I mean, there's probably the opportunity for some stucco, these concrete block walls, which are exposed at the rear of the property and on the north side from the existing corner back to the rear, are just that, and they're painted. So they would probably decide to parge those and then match them with some kind of new wall at the back where that 6-foot wooden fence is, needs to be removed because it's past the end of its useful life.
Have you met with staff on this?
Briefly, we have, Frankie gave me some feedback about the height, and I think our rationale with respect to the fact that the eave height is taller than the existing is that it's about 50 feet back from the street, and right now the eave is about 16 feet from the, I'm sorry, 17.5 feet from grade, and which is relatively limiting. I know that the addition would stick out 16 inches from to the south from the existing back right corner of the existing house. But I think it kind of helps the look in that, as opposed to a continuation of that eave at the same height. And I don't think the additional height is going to be that visible from the street. I think it kind of looks better with a differentiated roof line. So that was
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Laurel Fair with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The BAR ordinance is clear that height, scale, and mass of additions shall be subordinate to primary historic structures. This proposal does not meet these criteria and should be restudied so that the height of the addition is below the eave line of the historic building and the footprint is smaller than and inboard of the historic footprint. Further, the siding profile and window light cuts should be appropriately differentiated from the historic building per the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. Thank you.
April Wood, Charleston Foundation, HCF has reviewed the application for conceptual approval for a two-story addition at the rear of the existing house at 258 Cumming Street. This is an unusual property in terms of its placement away from the street. While we are not opposed to an addition at the rear of the house, it is standard practice that additions to historic buildings are subordinate to the historic structure. At 258 Cumming Street, the height of the addition should be lower than the height of the addition, and the rear massing should be narrower than the massing of the historic structure. Ideally, the proposed addition will not be visible from the public right of way. We respectfully recommend deferral of this request so that the height, scale, and mass can be restudied.
Is there anyone else speaking? Okay, Frankie, if you give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Okay. Staff had observations that one, the proposal is not subordinate in height, scale, and mass to historic house. The addition is taller than the existing structure and steps out wider than the existing house. Per the plans and elevations, the floor to ceiling height appears to increase in the addition, which is most noticeable by the height of the window alignment in the addition. Staff condition for approval, proposed addition should be subordinate in height, scale, and mass to historic while telescoping down as it progresses to rear, and the addition should be differentiated from existing house. Staff recommendation is denial with board and staff conditions.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Kinter, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment to the city staff comments?
Sure. I mean, well, I think that is typically an appropriate thing to do with respect to diminishing the impact to basically the size and height of a historic structure. In this particular case, when the house is so squat and pinned in between two houses that are almost 10 feet taller to the eave, it seems that, given the nature of the neighborhood, the urban fabric, that I don't feel it's a detriment to the existing structure to have a slightly higher eave line. The footprint is less. The 16 inches that it sticks out to the side is pretty minimal. I think it's actually an advantage, but it is definitely slightly different than the historical guidelines, but so is this odd nature of this particular house and its location 60 feet back from the street. So I just appreciate, if the board consider those aspects. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion.
The site does have some constraints because it is sort of an oddity with the building setback so far. However, the addition is far too wide for the building. I wouldn't, because of the constraints of the front of the lot, I wouldn't mind. I mean, if the addition actually went back a little further, as long as it could be skinnied up to where it could be behind the historic house. And of course, bringing it in off of those corner boards enough to where the original form of the house still reads. That's why I had asked if this had been discussed with staff, because this kind of flies in the face of what we always ask for, what we're seeing here. So I'm in complete agreement with staff and preservation groups. I think this is just one that's going to have to be pretty much completely restudied. As far as the roof form, I think you could, it's not ideal, but I think you could steal some room out of the floor to ceiling height on the inside. We'll bring the roof down a little bit, maybe maybe if the addition becomes kind of, if the roof forms become detached with the hyphen or something, maybe it could take on the form of a hip roof or something, which would sort of bring the scale down as viewed from the street. But like I said, I think this needs a total restudy, relook at.
I agree with staff. I think it's high scale and master. There's no question about the fact that it's the high scale and mass are a non-starter, and the juxtaposition of the addition to the main house is not acceptable. And the other minor thing, which I don't think is important at this point, is that it looks as though there's a significant amount of rearrangement of windows on the original structure, and we would need to be shown that those were not original openings, and so that to deal with that, but that could obviously come later. And it's always nice to have existing proposed closer together or side by side the drawings. So that's it. I agree with
Yeah.
Stan.
Also, I'd like, in the next time we see this, I'd like to see photos of all around the building that we actually know what's going on in the back.
I would agree with pretty much everything that's been said. And I will say that I think it's a really cute little structure. It's unusual, and I know it's vertically challenged and that's difficult to navigate, but I think there's tons of potential there to work out a good solution. And it's fortunate it's in an X zone, and I just hope that your wife insists on a beautiful garden in the front instead of a parking lot.
Nothing to add.
All right. I'll make a motion for denial with staff conditions and with board conditions to provide more information or better photographs of all facades.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for denial with staff conditions and a board condition to provide better photographs of all the facades.
Can I add to that? As well as a conceptual site plan.
Middle. Yeah, I'll reread it. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for denial with staff conditions and board conditions to provide better photographs of all facades and a conceptual site plan at the next submittal. Do I have a second to Julia's motion?
I'll second.
You, Bill Turner, I'll put the motion to the vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia,
And favor.
Bill Turner.
Yeah, in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. Okay, agenda item 10, 32 Cumberland Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview of the project, please.
Yes, me 25. East Battery, I hope.
Yeah.
Did I read the wrong?
Yes.
Yes. It was in a different order.
Wait,
It was in a different
Wait.
order.
hold on.
Not got changed.
That's it.
Oh, wait, okay, the staff comments have 32 Cumberland Street as number 10. What does the official agenda say?
The official agenda says 25 East Battery.
I think the agenda that we got in our email is different.
Okay.
Oh.
Just the staff comments are different from my,
I have no idea.
whatever a published agenda, if you are number 10 on the published agenda, then
Please stand up.
you will be
Your number.
10, okay, so 55 East Battery, I mean, on here it said,
I'm not gonna. Been joking.
okay. We are now on agenda item 10, 25 East Battery. And, sorry, 32 Cumberland is actually number 12. Okay.
Oh, mine.
Go ahead.
We reordered things and it didn't make it to all copies, apparently. 25 East Battery Street is in Charlestown, Council District 8. It is a category 1, circa 1885 in the Old Historic District, requesting final approval for hardscape alterations. This is the property's location on Battery. Existing site photos. And we will turn it over to the applicant.
Hey, everyone, my name is Bud Morris, builder. That Rob and Julie Honeycutt hired to own. That we can present this plan, this hardscape. Man out of Atlanta, Wood Land Design came up with it, so I'm just presenting what they have here. I noticed on the plan, it does not show the brick or the bluestone type, so the brick proposing is Old Carolina Savannah Gray with ivory buff mortar, and the bluestone is black. With Latticrete has a sterling silver. So realize I don't think I have an existing plan. It's with the photograph, it's a pretty weak site plan. The owner wanted some fountains, so if you look off the main stair, the southern stair, which has been approved by y'all already, Glen Keys, there's an access that goes through an arrival terrace, which is all bluestone, I believe, to a fountain. And then there's another fountain presented to the west of that. The car gate and the new entry for pedestrian is all already pre-approved by y'all. That work's already been approved. With Glen Keys. There's an existing trellis that owner really likes, but where it's currently located, maybe 10 or 12 feet west of the driveway gate. We're proposing to take this the trellis, pick it up and move it back. I think this is a better place to do it. So you can pull in and let people out, that kind of thing, the arrival terrace, then drive back and park. We're proposing to keep the there's a large elm in there. And 2 fountains. Everything else should be pretty self-explanatory.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone speaking from the public?
Preservation Society of Charleston. We're concerned that this proposal does not meet submittal requirements, given existing conditions are missing from the presentation. Before a decision can be made, more information is needed to understand the scope of the changes proposed, to answer questions about any changes in net hardscaping versus green space, impacts to historic material, etc. Thank you.
Is there anyone else speaking? Okay. Frank, you could give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Wrong slides. Okay. Yes, I'll copy them over. Property is a category 1 in the architecture inventory, so any alterations must be approved by the board, and that we appreciate the detail provided in the plan. Staff recommendation is a final approval.
Okay, thank you, Frankie. Mr. Morris, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments? Okay, thank you. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Sorry, I have one late breaking question. Is anything historic being affected? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge, there isn't anything in the yard that's historic. We're not proposing to move any of the buildings or change any sheds. Photographs are horrible. I know it's the construction site. As far as I know, the trellis was there. Glen Keys tells us these trellises are new. He doesn't know how new. He says somewhere in the 2000s, maybe 2016. Trellis back here, and then there's one under all this mess right here. So, but we're not proposing to remove either one. One of them we're gonna move, this one we're gonna keep. I don't think any of this hardscape is old. It's probably done in the two. You go back another photo, Frankie. You can see there's really no hardscape. Let's go back one more time. I want to show the fountain that was there. We're not proposing really to change any of this around the elm. Go back one more time. This is the main area of the contention. They just don't like it. It's diminutive. It's not grand enough. He wanted rooms he can entertain and be involved in the yard a little bit. So the idea is to open this up, keep this trellis and move it back. So I think it's a grand, well done design.
Okay, now we're still on board discussion.
Okay, thanks.
I took a look at the landscape plan. It's a very nice plan. It seems to be well thought out. But it's not to a final or preliminary review level. We really need to see some more detail. More detailed layout, dimension layout, and there are no construction details provided for any of the hardscape on the site. So we do need that. But I think from a conceptual point, I think it's a very nice design, and I would like to say the house is looking great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree. Conceptually, it's a nice plan, but you're right. There's a lot of information that's missing. And I would say too, you know, what's going to go on with landscape lighting. We kind of want to know that. I'm sure it looks like that might be a new fountain, probably an iron Janny Crane fountain or something. Got sheets on that, you know, just really just more detailed information, but the concept looks solid.
Yeah.
So.
And it's true that technically you shouldn't review it if it doesn't have an existing plan. But you guys are comfortable proceeding
I think it needs to come back to us.
to us? Okay.
Yes.
Um,
There's too much missing.
okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for a conceptual approval.
We have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval. Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
Second.
Julia, I'll put the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yeah, thanks.
chair vote to the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We are on agenda item 11.
Should we take a break?
Uh,
I'm just kidding. I wanted to see the reaction.
Agenda item 11, is 15 Meeting Street. There's not an 11?
Just kidding.
Oh, sorry, it's mixed up on both of them.
It is.
Wait,
Look in the slide. It is,
11 is
it
15
says
Meeting
15
Street.
Meeting Street.
I know, but it's 13 on the staff. comment.
Sorry, the staff comments are
Oh,
out.
it's all-
Sorry. Frankie, take it away.
15 Meeting Street is in Charleston, Council District 8. It is also a Category 1 circa 1760 in the Old Historic District, requesting approval of hardscape alterations and this is the property's location on Meeting Street. Existing site photos. Some context of Meeting Street. And architecture inventory from like 1973. We've got some more historic photos. And plan board map showing the history of the property. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. I am Cindy Pine, the Ward 1 Pine Landscape Architects. And we are pleased to be working with the homeowners, Aaron and David Hudson, and architect Eddie Deva on the renovation of this property.
but one of our primary objectives in the project is to make this garden more usable and functional for this young family. If we could go to the removals plan. I don't think-
Very tiny for me, so just tell me which one.
There it is.
Can't read things.
So the dark gray hatch illustrates the existing hardscape, and what that represents really is some large areas of brick which are now largely uneven or broken, and same for the stone. There are also large swaths of artificial turf, which we are really happy to get rid of, both in the front garden and in that central parterre. The removals plan also represents some strategic removals of plant material that we're proposing so that we can feature some of the beautiful oaks on the property while maintaining some of the more successful traditional Charleston garden shrub borders, especially in the front garden. Go to the next. So that is tree protection plan. Can we go to one more, please? So this is the layout plan, which calls out all of the hardscape materials. And you'll see that through the new organization of the garden, we have created a more distinct series of garden rooms, including the front garden room, which can be viewed, can be experienced at grade as a garden walk, or viewed from the porches, both of the porches above. A central transitional space that's also tied into new terraces that are immediately adjacent to the newly renovated parts of the home. And of course, the pool area, which was mentioned in the introduction, both drive entries. This property has 2 gates, both of which are being called for restoration and the existing masonry walls to be shored up and repaired. New pervious paved brick driveway that takes you to parking spaces at the back of the lot. If we could go forward. That's the pool layout plan. Keep going, please. This shows construction details. We're proposing traditional Charleston garden materials, so handmade, oversized old Carolina brick, natural cleft bluestone set in an ashlar pattern, and pathways, either stone or a crushed oyster shell, traditional Charleston garden materials. We have one more. Fountain details and step details, again, same representation of materials. And then do we have an overall site plan at the end? Yes. So this represents ultimately our what we want the garden to look like. This illustrates the green framework that will work in tandem with the hardscape layout that we just talked about. So this is ultimately what we want it to look like. That's it.
Any questions for the applicant?
Cindy, all that parking there in the back, is it up under those oak trees?
The oaks are in the parking, and we have consulted extensively with Eric Schultz on those trees, and he agreed that we're sort of hard pressed to accommodate parking and turnaround on that property, and that really is one of the only places that we can do it. So the idea, and that's called out on the tree removals plan, is that we would just top it with a crushed oyster shell and not disturb the grade around the roots and the excavation, so that the entire area within the canopy remains pervious.
Do you propose to put any bollards or anything around the base of that tree if somebody?
Apparently they're really good drivers.
It's a young family, do they have teenagers? Anyway, sorry.
Any other questions? Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking from the public? Frankie, could you give the city staff comments and recommendations, please?
That's not gonna be right. That's okay. This property is also a category 1 in the architecture inventory, so any alterations must be approved by the board. Staff appreciate the attention to detail and the thoroughness of the submittal, and we are recommending final approval.
Thank you, Frankie. Ms. Klein, did you want to respond to or clarify anything? And please staff. All right, we are in board discussion and a vote. Do you have a motion?
I just want to say, I think it's beautiful and I think, thank you, Cindy, for a complete submittal. I wish the previous applicant were still here so they could see it. It's a well thought out plan, nicely detailed, thorough. I appreciate your keeping so much of the existing mature vegetation as well.
Bill, did you want to make a motion?
I will make a motion for final approval.
I have a motion on the floor for final approval. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Julia. Put the motion to a vote. Bill Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay, agenda item 12 is 32 Cumberland Street.
that's not that right.
Frankie?
I think it's time for that break now.
Yeah, I'm just, I've already exhausted now. That's all right. Let's go. Let's go.
32 Cumberland Street is in Council District 8. It is not surveyed circa 1884 in the Old Historic District, requesting conceptual approval for facade repairs and penetration alterations. This is Strawberry's location on Cumberland Street. Some existing site photos. And context of Cumberland. And sample remarks about the history of the property. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
I'd like to distribute you a site plan that did not make it into the presentation. It is a good graphic to help explain part of what we're doing.
How do you say your last
It's Luskoviak. It's just like the way it's spelled.
name? Thank you. Sorry.
This is the real reason we put him out, not because Eddie said, hey, you put me last in case I need to be on.
It's a little punchy lately.
Ryan Luskoviak, I'm here with, I'm architect with Bell Garris, and I'm here with Eddie Bell Garris Architects. We met with Frankie, HCF, and the Preservation Society to go over this project and appreciate their input. We're here to request conceptual approval with final approval to staff of the repairs, the exterior, windows, new storefront, and a punch hole opening of the elevation. Just want to go over a little bit of history of this project. It's a predates the 1884 St. Laurent maps. It was originally a two-story backwards L-shaped structure. In the 1940s, the rear portion of the two-story coal shed fell down or something happened to it. So it is a one-story building and has had modern repairs to it. There's a new roof on it and some interior structure to hold up the wall because the wall's leaning. And taking a look at the site plan, the same owner previously was pursuing a larger condominium project that encompassed 32 Cumberland, the Marching Building, 9 Lingard, and that parking lot. So it was all one big project. And part of that project incorporated 32 Cumberland. And so a portion of the rear was approved for demolition previously. The owner has since abandoned that project for several reasons, and is now pursuing to rehabilitate and reactivate the existing 32 Cumberland. This is just a demo floor plan. We're showing 4 new openings on the east elevation. That's mostly what I'm here to talk about. But one key component that I want to bring up is the interior courtyard, and there's an exterior courtyard that we're going to be revitalizing so that there's more pedestrian traffic, and we're creating retail spaces. And so part of that is to create a connection between the interior courtyard and the exterior courtyard via this breezeway. That there's an existing opening on the interior side of the courtyard, and we are proposing a breezeway to go through there and create a punched opening on the east side of the exterior of the 32 Cumberland. This would create a physical connection between this interior courtyard and the exterior courtyard to the right. And also, these will become retail spaces. So right now they're just white shell box type projects. But part of that is they don't have a lot of natural light. So we would like to incorporate some new windows, 2 on the upper section and 1 on the lower section. And also to create a visual connection for the people that are occupying the exterior courtyard. It's just a residential unit on the 2nd floor. Roof plan. Here's some existing conditions showing the brick needs to be repaired. All of the windows are damaged beyond repair. They're all boarded up currently, so we're proposing to replace them with in-kind wood, true divided light windows, match existing profiles and trim work. The doors are non-historic, so we're proposing new doors to be a little bit more traditional in the style. And then there's a storefront that's kind of like 3 doors. That was like where they would bring coal in. There's a big opening there, so that is not historic. We're proposing a new storefront in that location that is just a little bit more traditional in style, something that you see along this area. There is a iron gate that's existing. We're going to leave that for now. And I suppose you could see into the courtyard a little bit. You can't see much. We're proposing a new steel balcony, so you might be able to see like a column, but you won't really be able to see much from that street. Now, turning over to the east elevation, this is kind of the important one. You can see there's a lot of vegetative growth. There's a bunch of pipes and wires that are punching through the facade. The brick is in disrepair. There's an existing hollow metal door that we're proposing to remove that, but reuse that opening for one of the new glazing pieces, windows. And then I'll go to this elevation. We think there's a hole in the building in the upper right corner of the building. We're going to keep the brick that we're taking out and fill that in and just reutilize that brick. So this is what we're proposing here. There's 2 windows on the right side. The center opening, that is just the opening in between the breezeway. And then on the left side, it's just one more window that aligns with the window above. That'll give some natural light into that retail space and provide a visual connection between the exterior and retail space. These are the interior elevations, which again, you can't see them. This is just to help explain our connections. The top one, you're facing towards Cumberland. You can't see it. That's the new balcony. The center 2 elevations, that is facing that east elevation. That's that arched opening I was talking about through the breezeway. And then the lower one is the 3rd elevation. This is a section cutting through that breezeway and the opening. And for all of the windows and this opening, we're proposing just a very clean steel plated head gem sill. It'll be painted black, so it's very purposeful. That's not part of the original building and just clean detail. This is just a structural drawing to show what we're proposing for that. These are balcony details. Again, you might be able to see a column, but you won't be able to see much. some interior storefronts. And this is the Cumberland Street side storefront and the associated details for that. And I also want to mention that the owner is pursuing the SHPO tax credits, and we have presented this to them. And they agreed with what we're proposing. And I just also want to bring up that east elevation, it's all painted, and it's kind of a secondary elevation. So just please keep that in mind as you consider my proposal.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
This is 32 only, not the, I assume the courtyard is 30.
Yeah,
So this is
the courtyard
32
is-
only, correct?
Yeah, this is just the exterior courtyard is not part of.
Not part of this.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
it's the same owner and they're developing that property separately, but we're not changing anything in that building, so it's.
Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking?
If it helps, though, we currently have a permit or have a permit in for repairs to 28 Cumberland.
Yeah,
The market.
they're marching. Okay. It was called Cumberland's, the restaurant. Well, that's old time. For you, I thought it was for you.
I have my wedding reception in this courtyard. No, it's Cafe London.
I just call it Bill Warlick's office.
Do you have questions for the applicant or?
No, we're just talking amongst ourselves.
I was just talking. I guess I just, one other thing was, this is being done in pieces, correct? So is there ever going to be a streetscape that shows everything?
That would be a good question. They're separate structures and I believe separate properties, so.
Okay.
I answer that. So they're all existing buildings.
Correct.
So the
I was
buildings aren't changing.
thinking too, the courtyard, just the, it looks like you have some iron work and it looks like there's a lot of things kind of tying together. I'm sorry.
Well, Eddie Bell, I guess, there is, there are existing piers that are part of 28, the old Cumberland's bar. That's a parking lot now, it's gonna be a courtyard. Those are gonna go away. We've already submitted for those. They're not,
Okay.
historic. That courtyard hasn't really been, other than it being a future courtyard.
Okay.
He brought that to bring, just to point out that the parking lot's going away.
Okay.
From that eastern wall, now will be sort of a retail front as well as the Cumberland retail.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to understand the context of the eastern wall.
Yeah.
With the courtyard, but that'll all be explained.
It'll be more of a
Okay,
prominent, it'll be more active now as the whole.
okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Me again. Okay, with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We appreciate the applicant reaching out to us on this proposal and are pleased to see this building getting some much needed preservation attention. Overall, we are supportive of the in-kind repairs proposed, but ask that the scope of alterations to the east elevation be scaled back. Recognizing that the one-story portion of the section of the building has been altered, we ask that new openings be limited to this portion of the courtyard elevation, leaving the two-story section fronting Cumberland intact. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Frankie, if you give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
While the oldest portion of the structure dates to before 1884, the structure has experienced a variety of alterations and additions. The proposed openings are on a side facade and distinctly modern in appearance, connecting the interior courtyard with proposed adjacent open space along Cumberland, which will enhance the pedestrian experience. Staff recommendation is conceptual approval and final review by staff permit drawings.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Luskoviac? Did you want to respond to or clarify anything right, in the public comment? Did I get it wrong?
No, you did it perfectly.
Thanks, Bill.
I would like to thank you, President Society, for their comments. I just want to remind the board that we have, we're pursuing the SHPO tax credits and have presented that to them, and they believe that what we were proposing is acceptable, and that the facade currently has been painted several times and has a lot of wires and holes, and there's a lot of stuff happening on that facade. And it is a secondary facade, although we are proposing it to become a more prominent feature, but it is secondary to Cumberland. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, public comment, the applicant presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Yes, I should have asked, mentioning this new opening being sort of a clean cut is just simply going to be a steel lintel and the brick coursing just runs as depicted on the drawings, or is there other headers, or are there other?
There won't be any headers, it will just be a steel plate over the top and then a steel plate that goes down the jam and sill. So if you're looking at it, it just will be a flat steel flat surface.
And that's all set into coursing, so it works.
That's right.
Super clean.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with the direction that you're going, and I'm fine. I guess the reason I was a little hesitant before was, I know it's kind of the cart and the horse thing, but the context of what you're doing on the east wall is going to make sense when the courtyard composition comes into play. Right now, it's like cutting holes in a wall and putting storefronts in it. So contextually, I'm having a little trouble envisioning it. I trust everything will work and work correctly. I think the composition of what you're doing on the east side, though, will come to fruition when it's shown in context with the courtyard. So a little bit of a stretch there for me, but I get it. I get it. So that's really all I had.
I will point out that we do not necessarily bow to SHPO, but in this case, I do agree with them. And the only thing I guess I would request is when that courtyard design develops, that you can somehow screen all that mechanical stuff that is really close to the sidewalk and really visible. But otherwise, I think it's a relatively conservative approach and thoughtful and nice.
I think it's nice to see this building getting so much needed TLC. I think that the approach is thoughtful and interesting. And Bill's point out, I would just assume that parking lot will ultimately be a really nice courtyard, and that those punched openings will do what they're supposed to do. And I think the bulk of the disturbances on the 1 story, not on the 2-story side. There's, obviously an additional punched opening, but I think I understand why that's there. So I don't have an issue with that. I think it's a nice approach. And that's going to be, I think that's going to be a nice building finally.
Yeah.
Julia, you had a motion?
I think so. I was gonna make a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff of permit drawings and a board condition to screen the utility connections on the east elevation.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval, final review by staff of permit drawings and the board condition to screen the utility connections on the east elevation. Do I have a second to Julie's motion?
Second.
All right, I'll put the motion to a vote. Bill Huey,
Yeah.
Bill Turner,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia,
In favor.
Bill Moore.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 13, 9 Lingard Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview of the project, please.
9 Lindbergh Street in Council District 8. It was the new in the old historic district. They're requesting conceptual approval for a new 3-story mixed-use building. This is the property's location on Lindbergh. existing site photos in context of Lingard. And I can turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, last one. Eddie Bello with Bello Garris Architects. And I have Brian Skowiak with me, also with our office. Thank you for the last application approval. We're excited. These are separate properties, but same client. This is sort of a collective design we're doing. This site is directly to the north of the building you just reviewed. I'll try to go fast. I know y'all are tired. Skip through these. There's no building there now. Remind you about, again, where we are, just really quick. Building you just reviewed, the big parking lot, Cumberland's, Cafe Lana, empty lot. Tommy Condon's here, the Luttrell Hotel, and then there's a big parking lot. Then our new building going in there. One thing that, and I'll talk about this when we get to the facades, but Lingard Street, of course, we have front facade, fronting Lingard. But again, thinking about this courtyard, which really has not been designed. But the idea is we also have sort of a secondary facade too, that you see that addresses that courtyard and addresses Cumberland Street. Empty lot, existing, proposed. So the ground floor is retail. Again, Lingard on the top. We've got a formal storefront fronting the street, a secondary residential entry, and then another frontage again to the south there for where the courtyard is. The second and third floors are 2 apartments, each floor. Pretty simple with porches. Thinking about the site a little bit, again, y'all know it, but our site right here, Tommy Condon's, Luttrell, Lingard Hotel. You know Lingard, it's a very short street, it's 1 block, but it's also a fairly narrow street with really tall buildings. We designed the Luttrell, we're pretty proud of it, but it is a big building, pretty heavy. It's got a lot of detail. Again, we think it turned out nice, but it's a big building on the block. Across the street are 2 really tall hotels. The one right across from it is 4 stories. Some site photos. Again, our site. This is looking east. Luttrell's there, Tommy Condon's, our site's there. This is from State, looking the other way, and then just right across the street, the north side. And again, this is from Cumberland. So the wall you just approved to the left there. Those piers were not determined to be historic. And so again, we've got to think through, but this is the view you'd see looking north. Thinking about the context a little bit, like we always try to do when we design things. French Quarter, looking at how stucco is handled, looking at some of the layering. I've always liked this building over on Queen that has the layering of the brick. At the corner of Cumberland and East Bay, that cornice has always been something I've admired. There's a little bit of natural wood in the area. And then, whoops, go back. And then thinking about buildings in Charleston a little bit. I've always admired this building on King. Part of it is the way the brick, the stucco layers in. You've got sort of this open and then a recessed opening and then the window within that. Also thinking a little bit about color palette. Again, the buildings on Lingard right now are pretty heavy. And, this is an insertion kind of in that block. We wanted to have a response to that, something very, very light. And so we came up early on with a sort of an all-white building. And after the fact, I went back and looked at some photos that I had taken over the years. These are actually in New York, but I love the idea of this being an all-white building with some kind of subtle detailing. So here's our north facade. This would be all stucco with some wood on the ground floor. This is stucco over the block. Wood on the ground floor, simple steel in some areas just give a little bit of lightness. Big windows, this is the north facade. So the idea is to have it feel very light. And thinking about how this works, this is 8 inches in front of this recessed panel, and then the windows are then set in another 6 inches. So very, very simple, but we think still very distinctive. There's the pure elevation, simple form, simple proportions, simple details. Streetscape. Again, you can see how large the trail is. This is a 3.5 story, goes through that 4 stories up on the street. Building. Feel like it fits in there pretty well. Just a couple of close-ups. Again, we want to use stained wood at the entry there. But you can see the recesses, how deep that is. That'll be a really good. Another view of the porch's work. And again, this is a steel, a little bit of steel there just to give it a little lightness. I think this shows kind of our idea how it might work on the street. Again, this is pretty narrow. It's kind of tough to get a view, but you see how it's a large building stepping down, but again, instantly really clean, really. So this is the western elevation. You can't really see this very much, but we carried most of the language all the way around it. And then this is the view from that courtyard. Again, courtyard's kind of sparse right now, but the idea is, because it hadn't been designed, but the idea is we've now got a 3-story porch that fronts that courtyard, fronts Cumberland Street, really addresses the that whole area, and the building sort of steps back, and it's definitely contemporary, but that's to me, a very Charleston way of handling how you front a courtyard. There's the pure elevation. This one kind of helps you understand how it all goes together. We really had to pack it in there. And the last one is just this view. Really, which would be kind of from the hotel. Can't really see this because you have to get really far back. That's it.
Any questions for the applicant?
How deep are those pier openings, for lack of a better word?
So this is 8 inches in front of that.
8
So it's
inches.
block with block in front, and then the windows themselves will be set back into that 8-inch block on a 2x. So you've got another 6 inches or so, well, 4 inches or so. So it should be very deep, very pronounced.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, that doesn't bother you that the potential courtyard entrance is not centered with your element back there? It's all the way you
It
kind of.
can't be. We tried. It actually though does, look at the floor plan, that wall angles out to be parallel to Cumberland, but we could not, we had it centered, but it's so close to the trail that it felt really crowded. So we got it to where it felt the best.
I'm just like a little concerned about that tiny gap. I just can't stop thinking about that tiny gap between this building and the hotel next door.
Well, so I don't know if y'all picked up on this. So there's a 2-foot reveal here that steps back. And it actually goes all the way across. We will have a continuous flashing joint that will go. Actually, we researched this to how best to build that wall. It's done. It's interesting. It's done all the time. But that'll be a concrete block wall that'll be filled. But we'll have a cap all the way down that'll cover that.
And
It won't be visible from the street.
the windows on the second and third floors are identical in height. Just curious the thought there.
Intention.
Any other questions? Thank you. You're the only ones here, so.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. I want to thank the applicant for reaching out to us. I've been really worried that there would be no public comment at tonight's meeting, so
Thank you.
to support their application.
Brian, can you give us any staff comments and recommendation?
Building height, scale, and mass of the proposed structure bridges between the existing buildings and serves as a transitionary structure for building heights along the street. And the proposal also follows BAR principles for new construction, complementing existing streetscape while enhancing the experience of passerby. Staff recommendation is a conceptual approval and a final review by staff of permit drawings.
Thank you, Frankie. Eddie, did you want to respond to the staff comments
Uh,
or April's?
Very briefly, I want to thank Ms. Woods for staying for the whole meeting. She said she wasn't going to, but she did, so thank you. Yes, we would, if, I know it's unusual to get conceptual for a building, but I think detailing is going to be pretty much what you see here. Nothing's going to change, and we would appreciate that. A little bit of response to Julia's question about the windows. Very intentional. I designed the building over, actually the building I talked about next to Henry's that actually does have a row of windows, and the very, very top ones are slightly lower because of sort of the way that composition worked. In this case, it was very intentional to keep them all the same. I think there can be a kind of slip into, is it traditional or is it contemporary? And as soon as you start doing some of those other things, it starts really, in my opinion, getting less strong of a statement. Again, we're not trying to shout, this is really trying to be quiet, but part of that's with the. That's all.
Thank you. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. Move into board discussion and a vote.
I think it's a very handsome building. I like the layering effect. I like the fact that it's a simple building and you've provided interest by doing the layering. And it's almost a play off a positive and negative space. And I think it's very nicely done.
I think it's a really strong concept. And my only comment and question for other board members, I think with a building that's relatively large for us and relatively impactful for us and all brand new, I feel like just on principle, we should see a little more detail than what we've got here before turning it over to staff, but see how that pans out.
Yeah, I guess just a couple comments. Make sure your client buys a ton of that pigeon nixolite, whatever. You got some nice legends for the pigeons. And it's cool. It's kind of giving me like, is it supposed to be giving me like a 60s vibe or something? It's kind of giving me a little bit of that. But, yeah, that's cool. I don't really have much to add to that, but yeah, it's nice to see a well-conceived design that is simple, but it does have, with the depth of these openings, it does have a lot of personality. I'm glad you showed that oblique view. I think that's where it really shows well, which is really the way the building is pretty much perceived. I think you designed it for the way that the building's actually going to be perceived, more or less a 3/4 or even more oblique view. So that was a good thought.
I like it. I mean, I think it's very nice. I'd be interested in seeing details like, you know, the stucco system, and that's what you're gonna need, a good stucco guy. I mean, I appreciate the fact that, you know, I think it's really nice, and I often think that sometimes infill design like this is problematic, you know, and not well done. I think this is really nice. I particularly like the top of the building. I like the fact that you got a lot of straight lines and the windows have curves. I mean, it's just very interesting, but you do need a good stucco guy.
I have nothing to add. I appreciate just not matching the height of the other buildings around it. I walk down the street often because I like the oyster place at the end, and this is sort of a hole, but it would just feel, it would feel really just gargantuan on that street, have another building of that height, so this will make my walk look nicer.
So I'll make a motion for conceptual approval.
You have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Turner. Thank you. Put the motion to a vote. Sean Moore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor.
Bill Turner.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn? A second from Bill Huey, all in favor? None opposed? Thank you.